I just watched an interview with Jered Goff. He's just chilling down in Vegas, enjoying his time, getting ready for the Pro Bowl. He was an alternate, he got in, all that good stuff. But here's the reason for the video. It's not just to talk about Jered Goff, the Pro Bowler. It's to talk about what he said that I think we need to love as Lions fans. And he said what we all hoped he would say. First, he said what we all expected to say. He was interviewed and they said, "What's the next step for this team, or what are the expectations?" Is actually how the question was formed. It was, what are the expectations for this team going into next year? And he said, obviously, the stuff of continue to build on, but he said the expectation is to compete and win the division and to make it to the dance. In other words, make it to the playoffs. And he added something else, which was to compete for a championship. Now, this is all well and good. Obviously, we should be excited about this, but they went on to talk about Dan Campbell as well. And they said, hey, obviously we all know Dan Campbell, known for the guy, biting kneecaps, of course. Like, when is this going to end, by the way? Like, are we ever going to have a time where we can stop talking about kneecap biting at the national media? Like, everybody just thinks it's so funny. And it's like, are they so out of touch with what's happening that they think it's an original joke? Or do they realize that everybody uses it, but they're just nervous in front of a camera and they can't help but say it? Anyways, get past the knee biting stuff. And Jered Goff's response on who Dan Campbell is, he said two things that were just astounding to me. Number one was what I think a lot of us say, which is, I don't think people realize that he's a lot smarter than you think. He talked about how smart Dan Campbell is. Now, this is what we talked about earlier when we talked about what happens if we lose Ben Johnson. What happens that this is still Dan Campbell's team. This is a team that runs an offense how Dan Campbell wants the offense to be run. He's a smart guy. And I think that's what I love hearing Jered Goff say, who just gushes about his offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, talking about how smart Dan Campbell is. That's huge. That is a massive, massive win for this Detroit Lions team. But then he said something else. And it was very telling, and he just kind of said it in passing, but it was a huge statement. He said, people don't realize how smart he is to be able to take this team. And then he added, he took us out of the darkness. He took us out of the darkness. What is the darkness? I'll tell you what the darkness is. The darkness is 3 years under Matt Patricia. The darkness is 3-13-1. The darkness is starting the season, 1-6? That's the darkness. And then ending the season 8-2. That's coming out of the darkness. And it's just a very, very raw, real response, because Jered Goff is a very buttoned up interviewer. And he's just talking. He's like, yeah, this is what we expect to do. And you can tell he's just a very smart guy. He's talking. He's just kind of explaining what's going on. And then to hear him say brought out of the darkness, oh my goodness. And you have to wonder, like, is it just the team or is it Jered Goff himself? Think about Jered Goff. He's in LA. He has these good years. And then all of a sudden he's being told that, like, he's not any good there anymore. So he's in Los Angeles. He's with the Rams. McVay is on his behind, right? So he's all over him. And it's just one of those things where Jered Goff goes from being a Pro Bowl, 2-time Pro Bowl quarterback. And then all of a sudden he has a not good year. And then he has another even worse year. McVay is like, I'm done. Can't win with him. Was pretty much benched, right, at the end of the year. Ended up playing a couple playoff games for him in that last year, but just looked like a shell of himself. He was not that great. So you look at it and you're just like, wow, that's amazing. And then he comes to Detroit, doesn't have a lot of weapons around him, starts playing well at the end of the first year when Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell take over the offensive play calls, starts playing well then, and then has what is arguably the best year of his career. And guess where he's back to? The Pro Bowl. It's his third Pro Bowl. Out of the darkness. And it's just so crazy. And I just love it with the Detroit versus everybody mantra, with they sent Jered Goff to Detroit to die. His career was going to be over. And here he is as a Pro Bowl quarterback For the Detroit Lions, his career has been resurrected. There's nobody wondering if he's good enough to continue to play in this league. None of that's happening. None of it. All that's happening is we are now seeing Jered Goff play good football. The Detroit Lions are playing good football, and he's given his head coach the props of bringing them out of the darkness, maybe him too. He just doesn't want to get that personal on just a random little interview during the Pro Bowl. But his coach is getting them out of the darkness, maybe him too, and he expects them to compete for the division, get in the dance, and compete for a championship. So I'm going to keep talking about that, but I want to take a minute here to let you know, hey, subscriptions are now live on this channel. We would love your support. If you want to support us in the form of monthly subscription, we're going to have some cool bonuses for you, some member-only videos or member-only live chats, things like that, priority response comments, shout-outs on the channel. It all depends on what level of membership you want to have. We would love to have you here as part of this Sports Talk Detroit community. So do that. I also want to get back and just talk a little bit about when he adds competing for a championship. I think it was almost underwhelming when you hear, yeah, we want to compete for the division. We want to make it to the playoffs. Well, yes, we know. Like you didn't compete for the division this year, but you competed for the playoffs. And naturally, the next step would be to make the playoffs. But he said compete for a championship. Is this a team that is ready to compete for a championship? And these are always kind of fun interviews because it's just like, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen in the draft. We don't know what those players are going to look like. We don't know who we're going to get in free agency. We don't know which of our own players we're going to bring back. You just don't know. So to answer the question is hard, but when you see what the roster we had this year was, and you would have to imagine it would be more talented of a roster next year, not less talented, then all of a sudden you're starting to realize like, okay, all right, yeah, maybe this is a team that should be competing. We should win the division. If Aaron Rodgers goes to the New York Jets, there's no reason we shouldn't win this division. It's wide open. It is wide open. There's not an elite quarterback on any team. And you can make the argument, if Aaron Rodgers isn't in this division, that Jered Goff's the best quarterback. You can make the argument Jered Goff was a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers this year. Kirk Cousins probably had the best numbers. So it's one of those things, but they don't have the defense. So I'm so excited to see what happens as we continue to add pieces. I hope you're as excited as I am, but sometimes it's just fun to hear from Jered Goff when he's got his hair down, a little bit, and he's just talking at the Pro Bowl. No pressure on him. It's just, hey, let's have fun in Las Vegas. And these are the things that he's saying. And I think he actually believes that. I think in the past, yeah, that's what quarterbacks would say. That's what players would say. You just didn't believe it. Now we believe it. All right, hit that subscribe button below if you haven't already, and leave a comment below. Love to hear from you. Consider subscribing and doing a membership as well. All right, see you on the next one.